love the smell of home playoff games in the morning. Apocalypse Now, slightly revised line. We won't get into it. It is First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast. Matt Baker alongside Nick Kowalski, as always, inside the Go-Goat Sports Studios, the Wall Center on Burrard Street. Great downtown location. And Nick, second place. It was the second major goal this team wanted to tick off. The playoff spot was wrapped up. Second place is now in the cards, a home game, and it's all striving toward the main goal, which is hoisting the Grey Cup. Some work to do to get there, but overall, a nice little feeling amongst the organization from post-game on in Edmonton. Feels good.
Yeah, big smiles here this week. I'm not in the guaranteeing win business right now, but I felt pretty confident going into that one on Friday that we were going to handle our own and control our own fate and ultimately clinch that home playoff game. And the guys just did just that with good start opening drive with James Butler running wild and probably too many yards allowed on defense, but they got some timely turnovers. They 4 in total, I believe. I want to say that the defense generated. So that came up pretty huge in the game, and ultimately a pretty decisive win.
James Butler, the CFL's top performer of the week with that 141 yards on the ground, added about 25 or so through the air. But I'll tell you what, you're right about all that, but I mean, being on the plane going in there, the group had the right mindset. They weren't falling into a trap. They knew that the Edmonton Elks weren't just going to simply roll over, and that's all great, but that opening kickoff, lost fumble Bruce Anderson, and it gives the Elks the ball around midfield, and they proceed to march down in about 4 or 5 plays, and it's like, okay, here we go. This isn't going to come without any little hard luck to start, but you said it. They respond perfectly, go right down the field. I think Butler had 35 on the ground on that opening drive alone.
Just pancake city, too, from the O-line on that
huge,
drive.
Yeah, and he had 95 in the first half. So I'm looking up the records here. Yeah, I think Martel Mallet was the last Lion to go 200 yards on the ground in a game about 13 years ago. His only season with the BC Lions, but didn't get to that point. They took him away a little bit in the second half, which was fine, and save for another turnover scare in the third quarter, which led to Edmonton's only other points. The defense, very stout, 6 turnovers, 3 on downs, 2 interceptions by Marcus Sales, and a fumble recovery. So, yeah, there's a complete team win. You mentioned it. Nothing perfect. They want to clean up something because going up against Kadeem Carey, we for sure going to go to Winnipeg this week. We want to get back there in a couple weeks, but there's going to be some key guys the Lions defense is going to have to contain if they want to achieve this Grey Cup goal we're talking about. But it was a fun environment to be in there against the Elks and wrap up second with the big win.
Mm-hmm. And for my own selfish sake, it was good to cross off my CFL stadium list. I've officially been to all nine stadiums, so that was pretty exciting in that aspect. And I was impressed with Commonwealth. A lot of room for me on the sideline, which is always nice. And for my job at least, I like the whole scenery of it too. The whole stadium was really big. That's what I kind of took away. A lot of rows in that stadium. So, but yeah, it was fun to be there, and it was a little chilly, but it is October after all, right?
Weather was a non-issue, at least for me. I mean,
it was colder before the game.
Yeah, I went out and bought gloves. I looked out. I went outside for about a 20-minute stroll, went down to Rogers Place, home of the Edmonton Oilers, like I always do, and I'm thinking, this might be a little dicey tonight. So I ducked into the Sport Check in the mall and bought some gloves, and then I thought, I didn't even pack my Lions toque. I wasn't expecting it to be this cold. Thankfully, I didn't need any headwear. Might bring the toque to Winnipeg this week just for fun. I think we're expecting around the similar type of weather. But, so...
The wind, though, is what was the issue beforehand. And actually, funny story, I was out in the hallway before kickoff, and Coach Campbell was standing out there too, and Stephen Flintoff, the punter, comes out or back inside around the locker room, and Coach says, "How's the wind out there?" And Flint says, "Nothing. It's good now." And Coach Rick just pretty much said, "All right," and that was it. So, kind of a surprise that initially it looked like it was going to be a factor, but yeah, it didn't play much at all.
So yeah, you've done all 8 road stadiums now, and I agree. I was kind of making fun of it last week, but not my favorite. But it's for football. It's a cool environment, and you mentioned from a working perspective. Well, other than some subpar post-game virtual conditions in the security guard's hallway, that security guard I don't think loved us too much, but we won't bore you listeners with the details. And it's always good when you win, and that was the Lions' first win in Commonwealth since way back in 2013. An 8-game losing skid snapped in Edmonton. We're going to do something. We did this a couple of weeks ago. There's so many topics that we want to get into. There's all kinds of news. Most Outstanding Player award nominees for the teams came down just a little bit on this Wednesday morning where we're recording this. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Nathan Rourke. The plan is for him to start. Might not play more than a quarter, but Nathan Rourke is officially back, folks. We're not going to have a guest today. You and I are just going to go back and forth and talk about some of these exciting developments in Lions land. Lions and Blue Bombers, as discussed, doesn't mean anything in the standings. We're going to talk about Winnipeg in just a few minutes, but we have to get to the Rourke angle. Mr. Rourke, he's done it. We announced this back in August 21st, I think it was, a Sunday, that he was going to undergo surgery and likely miss the rest of the season. But we left that little crack in the window open, Nick, that little sliver of hope. We thought, we're not going to declare him out for the season because he's going to try and get back. And admittedly, at the time, we kind of thought, yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but we're doing the research on this Linz Frank type injury and how people are suffering these in training camp in the NBA and the NFL, and they're declared out for the season. Nathan's was a sprain, not a fracture. Different, of course, but still, given how he utilizes his feet and the run game, you figure, yeah,
surgery.
Even if he comes back, how effective is he going to be? But he's looked good this week, knock on wood, and he's rolling out a bit more, and he's medically cleared to play. Rick Campbell has announced he will start. So that's
exciting.
It's happening.
It's
yes.
exciting. It's super exciting. It's big news for the entire league. I mean, he was the story of the league before going down. As we talked about, was on pace to smash several professional football records. Never mind CFL. And he's really the Goliath we need to ultimately compete with the Western Goliaths that are going to be bearing down our schedule here, coming down the pipe for the playoffs. And we saw the chemistry that he had with pretty much every single receiver in this core right now. So it's going to be exciting stuff. Even if he's out there just to get back familiar with CFL action, get back on that field and against a real defense, you got to be excited, especially with the playoffs coming up here.
And we say this, we love everything Vernon Adams Jr. has done, and we might still need him at some point here, right? Again, Nathan Rourke expected to get the first quarter, give or take. But we have to throw some respect Vernon's way, stepping in here mid-season after the trade, picking up a new playbook, new offense, new personnel, and he performed well in 2 or 3 of the victories he was at the helm for, especially in Edmonton last week. He was much more patient in the pocket, but yeah, a potentially healthy Nathan Rourke, well, he's going to have to be healthy if he's going to be counted on to play. In your mind, what does this do in changing what the forecasters should be saying about this Lions team and their chances to win it all? I mean, it makes it a much more of a formidable foe for the Blue Bombers. You'd think, should we be able to go in there again, have to take care of Calgary first, but
I think there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to say that the BC Lions can go shot for shot with any team in the CFL right now, and that includes Winnipeg. On the V8 point earlier, something that was kind of bothering me was the take that, Nathan's back, so now BC has a chance. I think people forget that Vernon Adams went into McMahon and beat them as a starting quarterback for the BC Lions this season. So
his first start.
Yeah, like you said it, that VA did a very good job in more so relief of Nathan Rourke coming back this season, and VA has told the media that he's aware of the situation and that he knows that it was Nathan's team prior to him arriving. And from what I've seen, Nathan, Pipkin, O'Connor, they've all done that quarterback room. They're very supportive of one another. They know their roles, and they've executed them pretty well all season. But to answer your question, I think that, I mean, if one area is not working, then Nathan Rourke can elevate the entire team just with his offensive play. We saw that game of the year in Calgary where Nathan just wouldn't accept losing that game. Those multiple drives, multiple third downs where he connected with Brian Burnham, who could also be back in the postseason here. So, yeah. I mean, if push comes to shove, this BC Lions offense, they can compete with anybody with Nathan under center.
Again, yeah, still a fluid situation. The depth chart, the roster will come out Thursday morning, and we're recording this just as the Outstanding Player Award nominees come out on Wednesday right before practice. So the second practice of the week still to come. We'll see what happens, but definitely a big shot in the arm for the BC Lions as they prepare for a run through the West Division playoffs, something they haven't been a part of since 2016. Last made it in 2018 as a crossover to the East in Hamilton. Did not go well. That was when Travis Lulay and Jonathan Jennings were still de facto 1 and 1A starters before Michael Riley was brought in that ensuing offseason. So definitely some exciting times. And quick note on VA. One of my favorite VA stories from this year was in a tough time. Lost in Toronto, Sean White had hit the upright on the game-tying field goal with I think it was like 90 seconds left. And obviously that was a very, very low point in the Vernon Adams Jr. tenure, was dropping that game to Toronto and, making Calgary a little bit more in the rearview mirror, so to speak, when it comes to the race for second place. Ultimately, it didn't cost them second place, thankfully. Sean White, competitor, very hard on himself, as any player in that position would be. The first guy to run over and console Sean White on the sidelines after the miss was Vernon Adams Jr. And I just looked at that like, say, yeah, this is a player clearly who hasn't been here long enough to maybe command that type of respect in the locker room, but he commands that type of respect. He's very much a part of the fabric of this team already, and that's just something that stuck with me. So, and again, maybe number 8 may be called upon in certain situations. We do not know. So Lions and Blue Bombers on Friday with Nathan Rourke in tow. Early indications are that the Blue Bombers are going to field a bit more of a starter-laden lineup than the one they had here on October the 15th. Of course, they had already wrapped up first place the week before. We didn't see Zach Caleros play a down. He dressed, but he wasn't playing. Drew Brown played quarterback. We saw veterans like Willie Jefferson, Adam Bighill maybe not play the full reps in the second half. We saw at least 2 of their starting offensive linemen in Jamarcus Hardrick and Stanley Bryant not play. But given the state of the schedule, they had the bye after that. Have this game here this week, then they have the bye in the first round of the playoffs. And they had a couple of reinforcements come back to practice at the start of the week. So this is going to be as close to a complete Blue Bombers team we're going to see. Could be a nice little test before the playoffs. Yeah, and again, I like the receiver defensive back matchup here and the Winnipeg's receivers because they are in line to get Greg Ellingson, who's arguably was their best receiver before going down. And I think Dalton Schoen's taken those honors with Ellingson out of the lineup, but they're also getting Drew Woltarski back, it looks like. So in a game where I imagine both teams aren't going to show their entire playbook, and by that I mean they could meet in very well. So again, in 2 weeks, I don't think either defensive coordinator Ryan Phillips or offensive coordinator Buck Pierce in Winnipeg is going to be wanting to really empty the clip with their playbook because they probably want to save that for when it matters in the playoffs. But with that, I imagine there'll be a lot of more one-on-one matchups, which I'm looking forward to see. I'm looking forward to seeing how a guy like Emmanuel Uragamba can line up against like maybe a Dalton Schoen or Nick Dembski for extended periods of time, and TJ and Marcus at halfbacks. They're going to have their hands full with Winnipeg slot backs. So those are some of the matchups, and aside from that, it's obviously a meaningless game in the standings, but I think it's more of a tone setter is what you can say. Yeah. So in the trenches, it looks like Philip Norman, Josh Banks can come back, so I imagine those guys are going to want to be as physical as possible to let the opponent, whoever they're facing off against, that they kind of run the show, and they're the more physical power in that game. So aside from those two things, those are probably the main things I'm looking to take away from. And then obviously the quarterbacks, how much is Zach Caleros going to play? How much is Nathan Rourke going to play? But like I said earlier, it's going to be exciting to see 12 back under center for a bit. Yeah, my source Farhan Lalji says that most of those guys you mentioned should be back. Josh Banks on the defensive line, Phil Norman missing a couple of games. Jarrell Broxton filled in very well for him at the guard position. And weird kind of feeling. Normally like this, it's the spots locked in, nothing to play for, but the intrigue in getting some of these other veterans back is something that certainly will excite a lot of BC Lions fans. Nathan Rourke, obviously, the best example there. We're going to talk about Rourke because he's involved heavily when discussing the Lions team nominees for Most Outstanding Player. We'll break down those, and we're going to go around the CFL meaningless final week. The playoff picture is set, but we'll talk a little bit about what's going on ahead of the eastern side of the bracket. Very interesting Eastern Division situation here. Who's the favorite in the East? I think you can make a case for any three of those teams that are in there, but we'll talk about it. But while we're here, we'll just remind you folks that Thursday morning, 10 o'clock a.m., single game tickets, general public tickets for the Western semifinal are on sale 10 a.m. Thursday. You're going to want to pounce on these. These are already moving fast in the pre-sale process. Lions season ticket holders, if you have not yet before Thursday acted upon it, you can do it. Refer to your emails for the promo codes. Great deals on tickets. Adults get in for as little as $30. Youth ticket program is back for the playoffs. 17 and under, $10. You're in. You can't beat that. Playoff football, certainly an outstanding deal. Our Truly Den is back and all those fun things. We're going to have our backyard party on Terry Fox Plaza, have some late morning margaritas and beers perhaps for $5. This is going to be a great event, Sunday, November 6th, bclions.com/Western Semis. All of your ticket info for the semifinal game against the Calgary Stampeders. Who's up for some hardware? We're going to get into that here right now. First and now, the official Lions podcast broadcasting inside the Go-Goat Sports Studios. Wall Center on Burrard Street. Shout out to our pals Sakaris and Price. Certainly having some fun times right now talking about the Vancouver Canucks. We hope the Canucks turn it around. As dedicated Lions employees, we wish all teams in the market all the success possible. And 82 games in the NHL, they should figure it out, hopefully. But if not, it should sure make for some good podcast fodder with Sakaris and Price. Matt Baker alongside Nick Kowalski. And Wednesday morning, not too long after we started recording this, the Lions Team Award nominees announced. So, reminder how this works. Each team gets a nominee based on votes of the Football Reporters of Canada. From there, they vote on the finalists per division, and those nominees move on to Regina. Grey Cup week, Thursday night, is the awards banquet hosted by TSN's Kate Burness. You and I were at the awards last year in Hamilton. Weren't co-workers yet, but we thought we were going to be. We were already starting to plan some of our cool content we're doing. And it was cool to see Jordan Williams, Bo Lacumbo get honored, the two linebackers. That was a cool event. That was the first time I ever got to enjoy that event in person. But interesting, it was a debate we were kind of hitting on for a few weeks after the Rourke injury. Would he still get enough votes to be in discussion for Most Outstanding Player? As of now, the answer is yes. Nathan Rourke, a double dose. He's nominated for Lions Most Outstanding Player, Most Outstanding Canadian. I think Most Outstanding Canadian's a no-brainer, despite only playing 9 games before this week. Most Outstanding Player, absolutely deserving based on everything he's done. I just wondered if only playing 9 games might hinder some voters' thoughts. Obviously, it did not. And potential for Nathan Rourke to be up for some hardware here.
Yeah, it is a very interesting debate, and the team elected to ultimately go with Nathan at both award nominees, and Rourke for MOP is still alive. I mean, as of today, we're recording this, and Nathan Rourke has 32 touchdowns this season. That's second in the CFL to Zach Collaros' 35. Just throwing it out there.
I know.
So it's a pretty close race numbers wise. I know Zach has more passing touchdowns.
Well, Nathan led in yards for several more weeks, right?
Yeah.
So
that's kind of my point. If you're looking at it just based on watching the play and determining who's most outstanding, it's no question Nathan Rourke. But he has played 9 games to this point. But I also want to give a shout out to Dominique Grimes. I think that he was a very, very worthy candidate as well. If the team wanted to go him for MOP, he has 1,347 yards. I'm going to call my shot and say he's going to lead the league in receiving this year. He's 11 yards behind Dalton Schoen as they go head to head in their final game.
Yep.
But I'm gonna call my shot and says Grimes passes him. I think he's going to be motivated to get the top honor there. But I think Nathan, I think he still was a very good shot for the League Canadian Award too, even playing 9 games. I mean, just based off that outstanding play.
Too many nominees to go through on every other team. We're not going to break it all down. It's more about highlighting these Lion players who have a shot. And you're right. Hey, that's a good nugget to watch for Friday night. Sean v. Rhymes for the CFL receiving nod. So Nathan Rourke has 2 shots to come away with some individual hardware. Again, hopefully we're playing for team hardware that week in Regina as well. Most outstanding defensive player. This is one that makes me really happy.
Same.
Because he's had his best year as a Lion, and he's getting recognized for it. Gary Peters, team leading 5 interceptions. And that secondary's had a lot of moving parts. They've dealt with injuries. They've dealt with guys switching positions. Peters has been the one constant back there. And a thing that impresses me about him, he has not missed a game as a Lion. Signed here in 2018, early 2018. One of those big group of former Edmonton players brought in by Ed Hervey on the opening day of free agency, and it worked out for Gary. He played 18, 18, 14 last year in the shortened year, and assuming he's good to go this week, which I think he is, I don't think they're going to rest him. He's going to play another full season. Very happy for Petey.
Very deserving, and I think that I've been saying this all year, that he's one of the few defensive backs in the CFL that does not get beat that much. And the interceptions definitely help with getting that national recognition. But, I mean, he was ultimately actually beat on that touchdown last week. But prior to that, I can't recall Gary Peters giving up a long pass. I can't recall Gary Peters blowing a coverage that was clearly visible to the average fan. So I think Gary Peters is totally deserving of that. He's been consistent, like you said, all year. His play's been consistent too. He's a leader in that room as well too. More of a veteran presence, taking the younger guys under his wing, which again doesn't factor in for the criteria. But I think that his play overall, he's in my opinion one of the top defensive backs in the entire league. So I wouldn't be surprised if his name should be in conversation for the league award, not just the team award.
Yeah, very well said. One-on-one coverage, you're going to get the best from him pretty much almost every time. Most outstanding special teams award, very well deserving. You could have gone for a couple of specialists who were there on the coverage, making the tackles. Stefan Flintoff's had a nice bounce back year in the field position punting game, but Sean White, shout out to Whitey, 33 of 36 on field goals. At one point, we talked about the miss in Toronto. Before that miss, he had made 17 straight over, I think, an 8-game span. So I think he's 54 of 55 on converts. He's over 100 points for the 8th time in his career. 8 times since his first full year in 2011 with Montreal. Whitey's overgone the century mark. I know it's all about this year only, but we knew he was going to bring us stability at the kicking position, and shout out to Whitey for getting recognized as well.
Mm-hmm. He's missed field goals in 2 games this season. That's pretty remarkable too.
Yeah,
because the other 2 came in that one game at Regina. But yeah, he's been very consistent as well. He came as advertised. I know the team wanted to shore up that position this year and make sure they had a consistent guy that you could count on, and got us that win in Calgary. We were down by 2 points there going into his game winner, and he hits it right through the middle, as he pretty much always does. Just celebrated his birthday too. I saw on social media
Sunday.
Some of the guys that were supporting some Sean White shirts that were pretty funny. I don't think those live past Instagram stories or anything like that, but you were saying this too, is how close this team is, and that's another reason. You had like Antonio Pipkin hanging out with the old man Sean White wearing his shirt.
I'm going to tell him you said that, old man, but we'll get a load of this. 37. He turned 37 years old. He's still 9 years younger than Lou Pasaglia was when he packed it in. Wow. So we're gonna start banging this drum. Sean White is gonna go for Louis' age record. I doubt it. We know he's already making plans for firefighters, but hopefully he comes back for another year, because I think he's still very much on top of his game. We've just outlined it. Moving on to outstanding offensive linemen, really, this has been a vastly improved unit this year. We've talked about it at length. But in times like this, and, confess, I don't have the real stats handy, like the pressures, the sacks allowed. But in a situation like this, it's no real surprise. He's had a great year. No real surprise that the guy protecting the quarterback's blind side really gets the recognition he deserves. Joel Figueroa is up for most outstanding lineman. And a lot of times you can consider this a group award. You just look at what this offensive line has done, allowing Nathan Rourke to put up these insane numbers, allowing James Butler to go 1,400 yards from scrimmage, over 1,400 going into this last game. But good for Figueroa, a veteran player who is still very much effective at this stage of his career.
Played every game too up to this point too.
That's
so
right.
That's a big aspect, and staying healthy at his age as well. And he's been a rock there. If you just watch the games, you don't see much pressure coming from that left side, and there's some pretty darn good defensive ends in this league. So he's done a good job in containing those guys. And I know our sack totals are toward the lower end of the league still. So I'm happy for Fig. I think he deserves recognition for that. And I hope that he actually gets league recognition as well. I think he very well could. I know Derek Dennis in Calgary probably would have been a good candidate too before going down to his injury.
Crusher, yeah.
But I think Figueroa has been as solid as they come at that left tackle position.
And we started with Nathan Rourke, who's up for 2 awards despite only playing half a season so far. Most Outstanding Rookie nominee, only 10 games played as of this recording, Manny Rugamba, but again, was Quincy Moget that got hurt, I think, going into that first Calgary game in August. As a result, you move around guys like Luchez, Purifoy, Marcus Sales. Rugamba slots into his more natural position, which is Sam linebacker. One of the more impressive defensive newcomers in Kamloops. That was one of those guys we looked at and said, I don't know where he fits in here as a starter, but he can contribute if he gets a chance. Mm-hmm. And he got his chance. He hasn't come out yet. Had his first career interception in Montreal, had about 46, I think, combined tackles. Good recognition for Manny Rugamba as the team's Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm. Just a fast player, too.
Very fast.
RP likes to bring him on blitzes, and he gets off that edge so quick. There's been multiple times this season where a quarterback immediately has to check down or get sacked even by Rugamba just because he's so fast off that edge. And he's found a knack for the ball, too. Recovered a number fumble on Friday there. So, yeah, I'm happy for him, too. He's fit really well into that Sam spot. He's not afraid to get his nose dirty, and he plays inside the box pretty well. So, he's been a pleasant surprise for this club.
And can be used in very different packages. I noticed a couple times in Edmonton, again, he was dropping back as a safety, dropping back into coverage and doing a good job of adjusting. You see the offense calling audibles on the other side. That's the challenge for good coaches like RP with this good personnel is how do you react to some of those changes you see pre-snap? So, again, this defense with RP, I know we've had him on a recent episode, and we've talked to him about that unit's improvement. He won't take any credit. He knows as well that you're only as good a coach as good as your players are, and all these guys rotating around, filling in for injuries. Who knows how far Rugamba goes in terms of being a division nominee, but this enough is amazing recognition after playing only the last 10 games going into this week. So, knock on wood, let's hope for all kinds of different hardware possibilities a couple weeks from now. In Regina, Lions and Blue Bombers Friday, 5:30 kickoff, AM 730. Moj and Julio have you covered. The Lions Audio Network pregame at 4:30. You watch it on TSN, of course. A rare instance here. I hate the word meaningless, but there's nothing at stake here in this final week other than teams like us getting a good look at some injured guys coming back, maybe the luxury of resting a couple. You have the Hamilton-Ottawa rematch. We're the first game on Friday, but then is there triple head? It's got to be a triple header Saturday, right?
So yeah.
Hamilton, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal rematch. I was disappointed. I wanted Montreal to win that game just for the purpose of having a winner gets first place last week, but all kinds of twists and turns in that fourth quarter, and it's one on a rouge at the end.
I called my shot there too. That Boris Beatty was putting that through the end zone, and they never showed this on the broadcast actually. But people in Montreal said that Chandler Worthy did step out of the end zone. Yeah.
They just didn't capture it for whatever reason. Yeah, that's
what ended the game. Boris Beatty put it through the end zone, so I called my shot on that one. But he just has a monster of a leg. I was hoping that they'd be stuck on their own 50 or something like that, and they'd have the guts to try like a 70-yarder to win, and Boris Beatty would knock it down because he's capable of it.
He's got the big leg, absolutely.
But, yeah, that was a fun ending. And Geno Lewis, that game, that tying touchdown at the end.
Huge. Oh, that was so good. Yeah, he made a couple of clutch catches down the stretch there to put him in a position to win it. And So Montreal, Toronto, you're likely going to see guys rested on both sides, as many as you can. There's salary cap implications here to it, but... And then we mentioned Hamilton and Ottawa. The Red Blacks officially eliminated down to the wire. Tim White was a thorn in the Red Blacks side. And then the season concludes again. I was hoping this one would mean something, but I'm not disappointed overall because we had a lot to do with that, wrapping up second place. Saskatchewan in Calgary, certainly a long off season ahead in Riderville. The Stampeders likely going to not keep the foot on the gas too long in this one because they're thinking about coming here for the Western semifinal. But the playoff picture, again, everything's all determined. Lions Stampeders in the West semi 1:30 on November 6th. Montreal hosts Hamilton, and I sort of teased this before we took a bit of a pause on this episode, but I just want to talk about the Eastern Division quickly before we're finished here, Nick. Who's the favorite? You can make a case again, maybe for any of those teams. Hamilton's peaking at the right time. Montreal's been hot and cold. Toronto's been consistently in first place for half the year. But we saw last year, home field advantage in the Eastern Final doesn't necessarily punch your ticket that easily. I think you can make a case for any of these teams representing the East in Regina, Nick.
Yeah, flip a three-sided coin. Definitely having the one home game.
Three-sided coin. Yeah. Three-sided coin. That doesn't make sense.
There's three teams. They can't flip a coin.
Two sides to it. Yeah.
Get a three-sided coin, and that's how you're gonna decide.
Gotcha.
But definitely having the one home game makes it, I would say, advantage Toronto in that sense. But like you said last year, that didn't give them the advantage they ultimately wanted. Dane Evans, the status of Dane Evans is going to be interesting. He left that game at the end there, so Matthew Schultz had to come in and lead that game-winning drive for the Ticats. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's tough to predict it's been tough to predict the East all season. I've liked Hamilton's roster talent all year.
You've been high on Hamilton all year. I've
beat this drum before, but they were winning the Grey Cup last year and ultimately blew lead, right? But I don't know, Hamilton, I guess. I'll stick with my guns.
I'm going to save my Eastern prediction until we preview the playoffs more in depth next week, but I had this thought. It's great for Toronto Argonauts. We've talked a lot about the challenges in that market, in selling tickets, and having an extra week to sell that Eastern Final is going to be huge. From a business perspective, I wonder who Toronto wants to face, because if Hamilton prevails and goes back there for the rematch...
Definitely Hamilton.
But you're going to sell more tickets, but do you want Hamilton fans taking over BMO Field? That's what I was sort of thinking about this.
Oh.
Montreal fans will travel, not necessarily to that extent, but...
I think it builds up more hype, too, if it's a fifth matchup they would have this season, right? Or is it a sixth?
Well, they met 4 times in 5 weeks.
That was it for them, right? So it'd be their fifth matchup. I think there's that rivalry series that's coming out that looks really good.
That does look very good.
So I think that would build up the most hype, and I think that benefits both sides. I mean, money's green at the end of the day if you're looking at it from a business perspective. So I imagine they'll say they don't care who they see, but.
I think the comparable in this market is, those years where the Lions were hosting Saskatchewan in Western Finals 3 in a 4-year span. I remember the late Bob Ackles wrote this in his book, The Water Boy. They liked that because they knew they were going to get a good gate. So I guess that's but again, something about having fans in different colors take over your stadium. I just hope Toronto rallies around the Argos and gets behind them. This is their first time finishing back-to-back first in the East since the Doug Flutie years of 96, 97. And again, last year, that East final got a little crazy in the second half.
Yeah. Another interesting note, too, is Andrew Harris could possibly
I read that,
yeah. That's really interesting. I like what AJ Ouellette's been doing there, but if they have Andrew Harris, we've seen him take over games this season as an Argo, so something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw him on the sideline. He was basically doing the Rourke thing, helping out coaching, had the headset, had the play sheet, and then saw some things circling through on Twitter that he might practice.
It's huge.
Give them an emotional boost as well as an actual football boost. But hey, I love this time of year. The Grey Cup playoffs are on the horizon. We will spend more time next week previewing the Lions and Stampeders. But we have a game to get through in Winnipeg. Always love going. You're going home this week. Some home cooking. You're gonna see Mom. What's your plan there?
I'm headed to the parents' house. Get to see my dog. For those who follow me on Instagram or Twitter or anything, you'll definitely see a photo or a video or two of me and my dog. It's a husky named Willow, so shout out to Willow. But I'm really excited to see her and my parents as well. But yeah, I'm excited to go back home, and I want nothing more than to beat the Bombers. Yeah,
even if the standings are already locked in. Yeah, I mean, going in with 2 wins in the last 3 against Winnipeg, maybe some motivation on their side. And, Winnipeg will have another week off to stew about it either way. So, yeah, love this time of year. We're going to take it one game at a time. Winnipeg this week, and then going to be a very exciting build-up next week for the city of Vancouver and the entire province of BC. Reminder, bclions.com, youth tickets age 17 and under, just $10. The public sale goes 10 a.m. Thursday, November 6th, Lions hosting Calgary. Adults get in for as low as $30. Playoff fever is back, and we'll be back next week. He's on Twitter at Nick_Kowalski, Nick with no C, just a K. I am at BakesTakes84. The podcast is at First and Now. Subscribe, rate, leave your reviews. Let us know what you think. We love reviews. Always love our hardcore Lions fans, and it's going to be even more exciting come playoff time, talking about the great story we have seen this season. First and Now will be back next week, the official Lions podcast.